This is Lara Bloom from the Ehlers-Danlos Society, and you are listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. All right, welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This is episode 98. We are so close to episode 100. Sean, did you ever think we were going to get to this point?
It's unique visitors, or unique clicks, or unique hits. The word I'm looking for is unique.
Okay, cool. So apparently Sean is in his own world, so we're just gonna move on here.
So a couple episodes, we were talking, in fact, when we first started season 3, we were talking about new visitors to your website. And I had said there's a common phrase or a common word in the web world. And it's been a couple weeks, but it finally came to me. They're referred to as unique visitors or unique clicks.
Oh, I see. So it's my fault that I didn't make that connection, right?
Totally. It is. I'm surprised you weren't able to recall that conversation.
Oh, man. Jeez. Well, all right. I'm glad we have that figured out. We have a really awesome interview for our listeners. We recently had the opportunity to interview Andra Stratton. She has a rare disease called Lipodystrophy, which you'll hear about in this episode. She's taking control of her situation, and she is an incredibly strong leader in the rare disease community. So here we go. Enjoy our interview with Andra Stratton. All right, Andra Stratton, welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
It's about time.
It is about time.
That's how it's gonna be, huh? We're just starting out here, and I think our listeners can already get a taste of the personality of Andra Stratton.
Yeah, well, I've been fangirling you two disabled dudes for a long time with not as much. What is that called? It's a little bit of an unrequited relationship. Yeah, so it's about time you have me on the call.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow,
I don't know. Show a little love to your fans.
I don't know what the word unrequited means, but I can imagine what it means.
Oh,
so, yeah.
Yes.
Why don't you give a little background on who you are and kind of how you found yourself in the rare disease community?
I was going about my life feeling like maybe I was a hypochondriac. I was a normal, quote unquote, person with jobs and kids and stumbled into a doctor's office. Fortunately, in spring, and I say that it's relevant, one of my doctors sent me to a cancer doc who then sent me to an endocrinologist, and he walked in the room and looked at my blood work and looked at my body, and it was spring, so I was like in a short sleeve shirt and a skirt or something. So you could see the way my body type you could see. And he said, "Oh yeah, no, I think you have familial partial lipodystrophy. Hold on 1 minute. Let me go print something out." So that was my intro to rare. I wasn't actually seeking a diagnosis, and I was there because they thought maybe I had some sort of cancer. So good news was, I guess, that I didn't have cancer, but actually I had a rare disorder that I was born with, and had gone 37 years without a diagnosis.
So what were the symptoms that led people to think perhaps it was cancer or there was something wrong?
Yeah, no, I mean, there were so many missed symptoms, like everything in rare. In my case, I don't have adipose tissue in the right places. And adipose tissue is that fat that's right underneath your skin. So I look very athletic. And so when you look very athletic, people assume that's the epitome of health. And it just kind of was always shrugged off as just weird luck that I looked that way, despite that I had really high cholesterol, triglycerides, problems with insulin resistance and diabetes, all the things that you expect out of someone who is much larger, who has more fat on their body. And since I didn't have any, it was just kind of discounted as weird, but not a problem.
When I first met you, Andra, it kind of was a eye-opening moment for me, in a sense that it kind of taught me or reminded me that you never know what a disease or a disorder might look like. So, like I said, people, you look athletic, people assume you're healthy and fine. So I remember when we first met face to face, of course, you look like you go to the gym 7 hours a day and all these little things. And I had made the comment like, "Oh, wow, you work out," or something to the effect of exercise. And you just were like, "No, it's my disease." So immediately I'm like, "What? What disease? How do I get it?" I'm just thinking not along the lines of health. I'm just appearance. So I remember walking away from the conversation thinking, man, you really never know what people are up against or what they're dealing with. So what I'm curious, Andra, besides you mentioned body appearance, what are some other issues or concerns that your condition presents even beyond what you can see?
So many. And I'm glad that I'm glad that you shared your thought process, because that's really common for lipodystrophy. As I mentioned, I think even my physicians really, I had physicians say, we should try and sell your blood. And it was really because they were saying like, oh, if anyone could look like that and not have to work out, for people who want to look really athletic, like that's really valuable. And I hear all the time, like, I want that rare disease, but unfortunately, that rare disease entails full body organ failure. If you don't, your body needs to store fat and energy in the right place, which is your fat cells. And if you don't have, that's the only safe place to store it. So if you don't have fat cells, because mine are dead, it just hangs out in your blood and organs. So externally, I look like I'm at the gym all the time. Internally, I look like someone who's morbidly obese. So if you saw someone on the streets that you thought was really overweight, our stereotype is, wow, they need to lose some weight and they're probably really unhealthy. Then you see me and you think, wow, she never goes to the drive-through fast foods and she's always at the gym. It's how we have stereotyped fat. And it's really problematic for everyone. Obviously, I have people tell me I'm lucky more than I have people say really negative things about it. But either way, there's that prejudgment. Sure. And in my next advocacy life, I'd really like to work with other body types and on body image.
Right. And so, Andrew, you mentioned
the next advocacy life. Can you talk to us? Well, before we do that, actually, what is the prevalence of lipodystrophy in the U.S. maybe?
Well, hold your breath. This will be shocking. It's unknown what the true prevalence is because it's not very well diagnosed, which I say sarcastically because it's true for most rare diseases, right? We do have new research out based on work with the Human Genome Project that there may be upwards of 100,000 people in the United States with a mutation. There are many different types of lipodystrophy, but previous publications say 1 in 1 million to 1 in 10 million. I mean, it's really all over the board.
Sure.
It's kind of like the cable guy being like, "I'll be there between 8 and 6:30 p.m."
It's more like I'll be there between May and October.
That's exactly right. That's where we're at with diagnoses. But
Sure.
I run into people in public. I see people that have lipodystrophy. And that's a whole nother conversation. Like, what do you do? Because they probably don't know. So how do I address it, right?
Oh, sure.
Because there is a very distinct phenotype. And like everything, there's a spectrum. But if there's been a few times I've seen people, and I know for sure, and I just,
Can't imagine that conversation well, first of all, I guess to an extent, it wouldn't be my place to diagnose them. But if I saw somebody and I thought to myself, I wonder, then, I start a conversation like, hey, I think you might have, or you look like, and that person is somebody that is committed to the gym and regular diet, like, they're going to look at me like I'm crazy. Like, they're probably going to be upset. Like, that conversation won't go over well.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think you should be the person to suggest. However, there are some unique aspects that would distinguish someone who goes to the gym all the time with someone who has lipodystrophy. So, because I safely know those unique distinctions, I have broached the topic once or twice. And that's a whole nother conversation. But just since we started, I'll say, I started by saying, hey, we look like we could be family, right? And then they're like, oh, yeah, we do. Look at our legs. They look exactly the same. And then I kind of feel the situation out to see how that goes.
This is not your first rodeo, huh?
No.
You've had this conversation before.
I have had this conversation before. And it's because it's such a devastating disease, I feel responsible for at least thinking about telling them. For men, it's the prevalence of sudden death is very high. And for women, there's many different ways that one would lose their life to lipodystrophy, but none of them are good. So there are some options, treatment options that are traditional therapies that work better than others for people with lipodystrophy. So I would always want to share that. And we have some things happening in the pipeline too. So it's a tricky discussion to have.
Let's dig into that a little bit. A little bit ago, you mentioned your advocacy life, and just now you said something about having the responsibility to broach the topic.
Yeah.
So what is that? What do you do? What does advocacy look like for you today?
Well, it's changed over the years, right? Which is beautiful. And I say that because my world now, 10 years post-diagnosis, is far richer, far more meaningful. I would not trade it. If that day I was pretty shocked. I wasn't very devastated because I obviously knew that my body was different than others, but to have a genetic mutation and discover that many other people had that And then a year later, fast forward a year later, when I met other people who looked like me, that was it. I've never turned back. Right after that, I started the foundation Lipodystrophy United and became really a trusted liaison between the medical community and the patient community, because there was so much information out there in medicine and research that was not at all available to the patient community. So I really started out my advocacy in becoming an expert about the disease, the burden of the disease, and a trusted member of both parties, so I could help make impact and increase the resources the community needed, and also help my medical community in lipodystrophy widen their scope, because they weren't really looking at the right endpoints, or the endpoints that mattered most to the patient at the end of the day.
Yeah, I wanted to share a story with our listeners about an event that we went to together. You were nominated for an award at this conference in Philadelphia in December. And we went and we had a really unique experience, to put it that way. And so I wanted to share with everyone. And so I want to tell this story from my perspective, but I really want you to pipe in where it's necessary. So, so we.
You get to manage the narrative, and I get to pipe in.
Is that fair?
Okay. No, it's not fair, but I'll play along for a minute, and then we'll see how this goes. We'll test whose memory is. All
right. So we get there and we go to the cocktail hour, right? And like get a couple glasses of wine, have some good conversations. It's all great. And then, okay, it's time for dinner. So we go in.
No, we need to back up. You're terrible at context.
This
You're terrible at context.
Maybe we need to switch roles in this
No, we're not going to switch roles.
roles.
I'm just going to give like a preview. Every story needs a setting. So this is downtown Philadelphia. So your hometown. I come in town and invite you to go with me, right? Full friends. I was excited to go to this event with you. It's freezing and it's a fancy event. So what do you wear to a fancy event in the winter? I did not know it was black tie, but I knew it was fancy. I dressed up. I had this really cool outfit on. Kyle also looked good. No, he did. He wore a suit. But we get there and there's so many people in tuxes. And Kyle's like, oh, I have a tux. I'm like, what the hell? Could have worn your tux for this. So we need to set the setting. Like everybody's in super fancy clothes. I think that is relevant just for a visual. Oh, and it's the really nice hotel. So it's this like big deal setting.
Okay, so super fancy cocktail hour, couple glasses of wine, go into the dinner. And so there's this room, there's at least 35 tables. There was this little side section in this room, and it was up one step. There were two tables in the entire room. There were up one step. And ours happened to be the one that's up there. Yep. So I'm there in my power chair, right? My brand new power chair. And we're up one step. It's like,
and we all look at each other. And here's the thing. I'm not an idiot. When I'm bringing a +1, I am sure to say, hey, we need an accessible seating arrangement. So it was not news.
But so their story was that like the event coordinator like got sick 2 weeks before, and they had to like switch event coordinators real quick, and that message did not get relayed.
But
anyway,
message.
Okay.
Yeah, so somebody from the hotel comes up to us and goes, you guys, I'm really sorry this happened. What I'm going to do is ask table 29 right here. They're in the middle of the room. We're going to ask them if they'll just switch tables. Like, it's not a big deal. Just everyone get up, go over there. Everyone from your table will sit here. And it'll be really easy.
And at this point, no food has been served. Nothing.
No.
So it's not an issue.
People just sat down. Yeah, so it shouldn't be a big deal, right? So she goes over, talks to that table, and comes back and goes, nope, they won't do it. We're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. It's not that big a deal.
So you're in the room, and you're in your wheelchair.
Yes.
And somebody goes to this table and says something like, hey, that guy right over there probably points to you.
Yes.
The entire table, we'll say is 10 people, can see that you're in a chair. They can see that the table they're being proposed is up a step, and they say, we've already set our purses down. We're gonna stay here.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah. So then I look at Andra and go, okay, this is weird, really weird. Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. So let's go over there and see what's up. You can tell this part. I give you permission.
Okay, thank you. Cheers. So yeah, I go over. So hi. Say, we've got a situation. Yep, they look at me. They all just are sitting in their chairs looking up at me. Yep, we heard. That's weird. Yes, it's really weird. Unfortunately, the only, we're the only chair that needs to not be up a step. Could you just take your table? Our table, by the way, was better. Except for this step, we were really close to the stage. They were at the back of the room. So we're actually offering them the better table. And they said, that's too bad. We can't really wrap our heads around how that happened.
They literally said we can't wrap our heads. What does that even mean?
What does that mean? Literally, that's their quote. We cannot wrap our heads around what happened. And yes, you can imagine that we also can't. However, here's the situation. Would you please move? No, sorry, no. So then I'm a little feisty. And I say, okay, let me just, wait, can I just make sure I understand something? They said, yeah. And I said, you all work for Pharma, right? Yep, yeah. And I said, and we're the patients? And they looked at me. Yep. And I said, yeah, I can't wrap my head around this either. And then walk away. And it turns out they are a company that serves only rare disease patients.
Wow.
Only rare disease.
Hard to wrap your mind around.
Yeah.
So, all right. Not the end of the world, right? So we go over to...
Well, for some people, right? But Kyle's like, all right, let's make this happen.
Figure it out, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. But, so we go over to the step. Andra and one of the other people in our party, they help me get up the step. I'm standing, holding on to two people. They pull my chair up. In the process, it comes apart. Yeah. And when we try to put it back together, when it gets to the top of the step, it doesn't work anymore.
Oh, no.
We're like, oh my gosh. So anyway, I disengage the back wheels and I'm able to sit down and push it over to the table.
Okay, so let me give the visual again that you're missing. All the lights are off. It's dark. And they can't figure out, like they can't even bring a flashlight so that we can make this happen in a semi-safe way. I mean, aside from the fact that nobody has wrapped their head around this insanity, let's talk about the liability of this.
Andrew and I are sitting there, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, so sorry." They can't stop filling our glasses with champagne, and like all these people coming over to us apologizing and stuff. We're like, "Yeah, whatever."
Yeah, they told us like we're sending over a bottle of Prosecco immediately. As I turned around the rest of the night, I realized every table had a bottle of Prosecco. So I'm not entirely sure.
It wasn't that special.
Okay, so it continues getting nuts.
It's so crazy.
So the host of this award show is a comedian, and so he is on stage doing his opening set. And it's like the dirtiest, most inappropriate jokes you could ever think of. Like, he's making fun. He's like trying to make jokes out of like terrorism on airplanes and like babies dying and like just like the worst things ever, right?
If he had it in his repertoire, he absolutely would have made fun of Kyle in his wheelchair. Like, for
totally.
certain, the most inappropriate. I mean, Kyle and I already are not feeling like we're kind of in disbelief of the whole thing. And then this is happening, and we just look at each other and we're like, is this really happening? Or did they give me too much Prosecco? This is insane.
So people are like looking down at their laps, like not making eye contact with each other because everyone is so uncomfortable. Because this guy keeps going on and on for like 15, 20 minutes. All these, and then one joke is dirtier than the last. At one point he goes, no one's laughing and they're just groaning after every joke. And at one point he goes, come on, you guys. It's funny if you let it be. He literally says that. Wow. So he's just dying up there. Meanwhile, the table right next to us, they're actually down the step, but this table, every single person at the table simultaneously gets up and walks out the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're like, what?
I mean, if you think about it, no one was willing to like make a stance and leave the room because Kyle had to go up a step in a wheelchair, but they were certainly willing to leave their table. I mean, it's not the same table. They didn't know, but just the irony of now this empty table down the step, an accessible table that is now available, except we can't easily get down to use it. So
at some point, I didn't even think of it, but I looked over at Andrew and I was like, oh no, I have to go to the bathroom. Like, how do we get down this step? Man. So they took a spare, like, square table and they put it up to the step and created, like, a makeshift ramp. To get down the step.
Which, clever and worked, but so unsafe, still in the dark. And by the way, the bottom of this ramp was a pillar. So Kyle would have to get down the ramp and like turn it around.
So that happens. They go through a few awards and then there's an intermission. And during the intermission, there is a step and repeat banner on the stage. It's up like, I don't know, 5 or 6 steps onto the stage. Everyone's going up there like super glad, handing each other, slapping each other on the back like, oh, you're so awesome. You take care of the patient so much. You're the best, you know, all this stuff. And we're sitting there.
Kyle is stuck up a step, probably needing to pee at this point, and we have not solved how he's going to get down. We got up, but now what?
If somebody in a wheelchair like me, I didn't want to, but if somebody in a wheelchair wanted to get on stage and take a picture in front of that step and repeat banner, they couldn't.
They could not.
And meanwhile, all these pharma guys are just like being just like, I am the best ever, and like so happy and like taking pictures and congratulating each other, and we're like, wait, all right, what is the point of this?
Yeah, did you say the event is something to award? Like, was it a patient recognition sort of celebration?
It wasn't. They're mostly farm awards to each other, but a lot of innovation, like patient-driven initiatives. That was the joke. The opening, aside from the inappropriate comedian, the opening speech by the sponsor, as people were receiving their awards, every single one of them talked about the importance of the patient. So at this point, I'm almost laughing harder at this than at the inappropriate jokes that you shouldn't be laughing at. Bananas. Total bananas.
So towards the end of the night, we're like looking at the program, and there's the nominating committee. There's pictures and titles of the entire There's 20 people in this program. Not a single one of the nominating committee was a patient.
Nope.
And we're just like, wait a minute, these are the awards that are for patient-centric projects or whatever. And so that event sort of left a bad taste in our mouth, except it was just so ridiculous and we had a good time. So
we did have a good time, really, because of Kyle's relentlessness. And here's the thing. This can't be the only time you have faced a literal physical obstacle in getting into a building or up so you were a total pro about it. That's not the point. The point is, especially since we're leaders in advocacy, that it's our job to make sure that someone who doesn't feel as confident as we do can go to an event like that and enjoy themselves.
We've come a long way in patient advocacy, but we obviously have a long way to go. So there's plenty of opportunity.
Yeah.
That's how I would think of it. It's an opportunity to improve.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you guys experienced that together. Not that you experienced it at all, but at least you had each other and you could laugh about it maybe at some point. And
I'll say, oddly enough, Kyle has not asked me when I'm coming back to Philly to go hang out again.
So that whole thing is your fault.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Where do our listeners find you? Where do we keep track of what you're doing and what you're working on?
Oh, my goodness. You can find on Twitter, Livin' La Vida Lopo. Living the Lipodystrophy life. That's kind of our Lopos are a little bit crazy. So it's a spin-off of Loco.
Sure. And
lipo is just like fat. I mean, that's weird. So Living La Vida Lopo on Twitter. And also I have a little ditty I do on the side. Rare and Common is a podcast.
Yeah, the Rare and Common podcast.
Yep. Yeah. And so we release once a month. Those are stories that really it's just a same thing we've been talking about. Doesn't matter what rare disease you have. We have so many commonalities. So it's a bigger community than just each individual disease.
Well, Andrew, I'm thankful that you joined us today. The story of your event in Pennsylvania is absolutely ridiculous, but so entertaining. We'll be sure to link all of your handles, your website, all the stuff you have going on. We'll encourage our listeners to check out your podcast once or twice. Don't leave us. But
no.
Listener,
you two are my favorite podcast. I'm far friendlier. I'm a big fan girl. I love listening to you two. I prefer spending time with you, even if that means that you guys get stuck behind and I skip along up the step without you. But even still, every time with you is great.
Well, thank you, Andra. Obviously, or hopefully, we love you too, and we're glad you've been on this show today. Thanks for joining us.
I love that lady. She is fun and funny. And even though it was just over the phone, she makes me laugh. And she's definitely one of those people I would make a point to hang out with if we were neighbors.
Yeah. She's very engaging, I think.
Yeah, and she's cool. I like her a lot. We hope you enjoyed that interview. We're thankful that you listened, that you're here, and that you continue to listen. We have come to the time that we share a quick thank you note before we wrap up with you for this episode. We've said it a few times, but Kyle and I both believe in the power of gratitude. So we are making it a point to share at least one thank you note on our episodes, and we would encourage you to do the same. Express some appreciation in your life. So for me, my thank you note this week goes to my employer, the CEO of our company. I've mentioned it before, but obviously with my injury and trying to get back to work, they have been above and beyond accommodating. So here's what I would write to our CEO, or my CEO.
And that's Nugget Markets, right?
Yeah.
Giving them credit. They're pretty awesome, yeah.
So thank you, Eric. You and your dad have built a company that emulates world-class employment at an unprecedented level. It is obvious to me why we are a top 100 company to work for, according to Fortune magazine. I'm honored to be a part of the Nugget Market family. Thank you for your consistent demonstration of servant leadership.
Yeah, man, I like that. Good stuff. Yeah, I mean, just in our conversations, with all the stuff with your injury and everything and getting back to work, it sounds like they've just done incredible things to help you out.
Absolutely. And I'm sure I could write pages of thank yous to them. So I'm not like cutting it short because I had nothing else to say. These are just meant to be brief little things to think on that make life great. So, Kyle?
Uncle Steve, thank you for continuing to be one of my biggest supporters. You set an incredible example with your dedication to family. When we visited you in the summers when we were little, you pushed us when it came to the outdoors, and that's something I've come to appreciate. I'm inspired by the thousands of miles you've ridden on 1.5 legs. You've taught me to never slow down.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, and I'm sure, it's family. I'm sure you could write pages of things on your Uncle Steve.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
We'd encourage our listeners, you to send a text, a phone call, an email, do whatever you want to do to express some appreciation to people or somebody important in your life. Thank you as always for tuning in. We look forward to talking with you next week. Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
Find us online at twodisableddudes.com and please subscribe on the iTunes. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And special thanks to our audio producer, Jake Tompkins.
Until next time, keep living with urgency.